If you had asked me about 10 years ago, would I ever consider becoming a UU, after you had explained to me what in the world a UU was, I would have said, no thanks. I'm Mormon. I'm good. I'm a member of a church already. I'm a member of the one true church, as we like to refer to ourselves. So, how in the world did I end up here? I ask myself, actually, still. When I look back over my journey to get to here, it was a long, complicated, painful process. But as I look back from where I stand today, not only do I see the difficulty and the pain, but I see hope. Because, wow, I'm sorry, I'm going to get emotional today, sorry. If I could do this, if I could have this change of heart, this change of mind, then maybe my family could do this, the rest of my family, and your families, your neighbors, your coworkers, your friends. Because if we want to actually make lasting progress in this world, we're going to need to be able to touch a lot of people's minds and hearts so that we can find common ground and begin to work together and stop being so stuck on our sides of the wall. So in order to understand how deep this change was for me, you kind of need to understand where I came from. I was born and raised Mormon. I was very devout. I did everything I was supposed to do. I read my scriptures. I said my prayers. I went to 3 hours of church on Sunday, voluntarily most of the time. I went to youth activities every week. I loved it. I was the best kid. The worst thing I ever did as a kid probably was when I snuck a flashlight and books into my bed at night so I could read because my parents had taken away my books because I had done, I don't remember what I did that was, so bad to actually merit a punishment. But that is about as bad as I got as a little kid. And when I was growing up, I also faced a lot of persecution for my beliefs. There was an evangelical pastor in my town that really had it out for the Mormons for some reason. It wasn't even for any of the good reasons. He just hated Mormons. there are some good reasons. But I remember having one parent tell their kid that I was not welcome in their house anymore after they found out because I would be such a bad influence. All that. Not doing drugs, not drinking. Terrible, terrible influence that I was. I had a friend in middle school joke with me that they were going to go out to their youth activity and they were going to hunt down some Mormons and tar and feather them. So there was a lot when I was growing up. It was a lot to deal with. And I, over time, just built up this wall around me. Every single one of those incidents was another wall. I'm not going to let that stuff get to me. And there on the other side, I'm safe in here. And pretty soon that wall became so thick that neither of us on either side had any chance of hearing each other. So, when we tried to talk to each other about religion and things, we might as well have been banging our heads against that brick wall for all the communication that was actually happening. We all just ended up mad with a headache. So why would you bother talking to a brick wall? Why should you guys continue to talk to people when it feels like you're talking to a brick wall? Well, because there is hope. There is hope that you can help break down those walls. I'm proof of that. And there are actually some really easy ways that you can employ in your life to help break down those walls. When we were starting to prepare this service, Tim suggested that I pick up a book called High Conflict by author and journalist Amanda Ripley. And she had studied for this book conflicts ranging from local city council disputes to gang turf wars to things as big as Israel and Palestine. And she found these common threads that went through all these conflicts where you get so stuck in your ways that you can't hear each other. And the first thing that she found that you needed to do if you wanted to actually get through to the person on the other side of your wall was you need to stop talking and you needed to take a step back and listen. Because when we're at that wall, we're both just shouting at each other. And nothing can be heard because we're just shouting. But if you take a step back and you do what we do here at Chalice, you practice deep listening. So you guys already are like one step ahead of everybody else. You practice deep listening and you practice active listening, where you repeat back to somebody, kind of summarize what they've said and say, have I understood you correctly? So if you do that, you listen and you show that you have understood them, they have space to stop screaming. And now their ears are open and they can hear you. And when you start to communicate like that, you both understand each other better and you start to develop some respect because you've shown that person respect. They're usually going to give it back to you. And if you are communicating with someone, you're understanding, you're having respect, well, that person's no longer your enemy. None of us want to compromise with our enemy, right? But you can compromise with someone that you respect, someone that you understand, even if you don't completely agree with them. It is still possible to find something that you can come together on. So on the flip side of that, not listening can very much backfire. And an example of that in my journey to here was Proposition 8 in California. So during Prop 8, I was still a member of the Mormon church. I did not have strong feelings, honestly, about gay marriage and when that came out. Was not something I had really thought about because honestly, it did not affect me. It was not on my radar. It didn't come up for me. I did not know any of these mythical gay people. So I was like, okay, whatever. Our prophet came out at the time and said, well, we want you guys to vote for Proposition 8 because it aligns with our values, it supports traditional families, blah, blah, blah. Doctrinally, it makes sense that Mormons would vote for Prop 8. So I said, okay, the guy in charge who's speaking for God says that that's what we should do. I guess that's what I will do. Still didn't really have any strong feelings about it either way. And then our prophet came out and encouraged Mormons in California to actively campaign for Proposition 8. And a lot of people I knew got really into it, like really scarily into it. I can look back at now and be like, holy cow. So everybody I knew was doing it, and I decided to jump off the cliff along with them. I was like, I'll do my little part. I started a blog with all the talking points they had given us from all these research articles from conservative think tanks that aren't really true, but they were presented as authoritative. They were presented as truth. And not knowing better, I was like, all right, I will go along with this. So I blogged, and my friends read my blog, and they were like, yes, you're awesome at this. You're a good writer. You're getting our points across. And it felt really good because people were like, yeah, you're doing a good job. You're doing a good thing. Up until one of my friends from high school read my blog because I had advertised it, on Facebook and things. And so she read my blog and she came at me about it. She started arguing with me about it. And especially because I had that history of being so defensive to anyone, particularly from my high school, we immediately just butted heads. There was no hope that she and I were ever going to be able to talk when she came at me in a confrontational way. She set the tone, I responded, boom, wall went right up. And I look back at it now, and I think to myself, if we had been able to de-escalate that, if we perhaps hadn't come into that with all of our baggage, if she had been able to listen to me, she would have seen that I was not motivated by hate, which is a common assumption a lot of times, that a lot of conservative people are motivated by hate. I was motivated by a desire to do good things and to protect. That was what I thought I was doing. My conclusions that I drew were flawed because the information I was pulling from was flawed. But my heart was not. And if I had been able to listen to her, I might have seen so much earlier how my religion was being used as a tool against me to get me to manipulate and hurt other people. So the conversations she and I had made minimal impact on me. They left tiny little cracks in that wall, but they were easy for me to ignore. because they were so small and because they didn't impact anybody that I personally knew. Still did not know any of the mythical gay people at that point in time. There's not a lot of them among the Mormons. There's a lot more of them among the ex-Mormons. So that was another key that Ripley talks about in her book, is getting to know people, look past stereotypes, and learning all about individuals. So once you know someone beyond just I'm a Mormon, I'm a gay, I'm a Black person, I'm whatever, you start to see how complex we each are, and you can no longer dehumanize those people. All of us here have fallen for stereotypes and categorized people that way because it is human nature. We instinctively want to categorize people into us or them. It's a prehistoric thing. It was for survival, but we still do it today. I remember a lot of times when I was growing up, I would get the most ridiculous questions when people found out that I was Mormon. I was asked things not as ridiculous, like, are you from Utah? That was fair. Do your parents have 10 kids? Getting a little more iffy. Do you guys actually sacrifice goats in your temple as part of your sacred rituals? And my favorite, do you have horns hidden under your hair? I legit have been asked all of those questions multiple times by people that were serious. I'm like, I know my hair's curly and it's big, but promise, there's no horns under there. They don't magically grow because you believe in Mormon Jesus. So those questions were really annoying when people would come to me, and I heard them over and over and over. And I thought, how can you believe something so silly about Mormons? Well, for the same reason that I perhaps believed a lot of ridiculous things about people in other cultures, other races, other experiences than mine, because it is really hard for us to recognize our internal biases unless we have some external help. For me, my external help came in the form of Twitter, of all things. I signed up for Twitter in the early 2010s because I was a writer, and that was what a marketing class that I took said. You should go sign up, make connections with other people. This is good for your career. So I signed up, and I actually was amazed by the vibrant international writing community on Twitter at that point in time before everything went downhill. And I pretty quickly saw, as I talked with all these people from all over the world, that I had been doing that exact same thing that I hated so much when people did to me. When they judged me because I was Mormon and they thought they knew all about me, well, I had been doing it to them. I met so many people from so many different backgrounds. I met Black people, I met Hispanic people, queer people, people of color, indigenous people, Hindus, Muslims, people from all over the world. And every single one of them so much more than any one individual label I could tell you. They each contain multitudes. They were wonderful and complex, and none of us were perfect, but we all had this thing that we loved in common. We all loved writing and sharing our stories. So when my queer friends started to write about the homophobia that they faced and all the pain that they endured, I felt ashamed as I looked back at my participation in Proposition 8. As small as it had been, I was deeply ashamed. At that point, the wall that I had built to isolate and protect myself started cracking pretty bad. My moral foundation, where I thought I was safe standing on, I thought I knew what was right, what was good, started to crack under my feet. As I read more and more of my friends' stories, I was exposed to these new perspectives on the world, beautiful, often heartbreaking stories, and I saw things that I had never been able to see before. As my friends wrote about the oppressive weight of things like systemic racism and generational trauma, I knew that what they were saying was true. I read more and more books. I sought out more and more stories by marginalized authors because I had to know. I had to know what I had been blind to all my life. And when I started to understand the harm that I had done, even though it was unintentional, the harm I had done because of my religion, I cried. I was forced to confront some really uncomfortable truths about myself and my beliefs and my church. I couldn't ignore that harm that we were doing any longer, not after becoming friends with all of these people. My walls crumbled at that point. The foundation under my feet was shot through with cracks. Nothing in my life was sure anymore. All my life, the one thing I have really clung to is be kind. As Jesus taught, the second most great commandment is to love your neighbor as yourself. And after being bullied relentlessly for a multitude of different things as I was growing up, I knew exactly how important kindness and love could be. That they were life-changing, that they could be life-saving. But how could I say that I was loving my neighbor when my church said that their very existence was a sin? Jesus taught to care for the poor and the needy, but people that I knew refused to put on a mask. They rejoiced in that rebellion and their refusal to help protect the innocent. Every one of these contradictions just chipped away at the ground beneath my feet. I found myself dodging over crevices, trying to figure out what was true, what can I hold on to, who is telling the truth, what is right, what is good. And I kept trying to cling to those beliefs that I had been raised with because I was so afraid of the unknown. And then the earthquake hit. My oldest child came out to me. And I will forever be thankful for all the queer friends that I had made, who had been so loving and kind, who had taught me all those things over the past however many years it had been. Because of their kindness, because of the way that they shared with me, I was able to understand what in the world my kid was talking about with all these terms and abbreviations and things. And I also knew how important it was to just accept them, to respect them, and to love them. That was all I needed to do. They weren't broken. They didn't need to be fixed. My oldest kind of slow-rolled their process of coming out. So when they were eventually ready to tell our local congregation, we were hesitant. But they actually took it pretty well. The congregation did their best to use the new name, to respect their pronouns, and I credit that mostly to a loving bishop. We have bishops, not reverends. Well, they have. It's just still weird. I still kind of think of it as we. Culturally, I will forever kind of be Mormon. So the bishop, the leader of that congregation, was a very loving, wonderful man who had kids around the same age. He was around my age, which helped because a lot of times bishops are closer to 60. And if you're a 60-year-old white Mormon man, you're probably pretty set in your ways. So our bishop was great with it. He's like, yeah, just come, like wear whatever you want. I'm glad you're here. And so we were off to a good start. Things were going okay. I was like, maybe we can find a way to make this work. Maybe I can stay in this church and be a force for good. Maybe I can kind of make some changes. And I tried. We tried for a while until I ran across the policy in the LDS Bishop's Handbook, which is the only training they receive. They don't go to school or anything. They just get given a rule book. Here you go. Go forth and be in charge of your congregation. it's not a good idea. The policy said that bishops were ordered to discourage transitioning in any form. No medical or surgical transition, no taking hormones, no wearing different clothes than the gender you were assigned at birth, and not even changing your name. Anybody else could go by a nickname if they wanted, but not if you were trans. And simply changing your name would be enough to potentially have you subject to church discipline. Your membership could be restricted. You could be called to a council and expelled from the church just for that. I had read all the studies. Well, not all of them. I'd read a lot of them at that point in time. I knew about the suicide risks that trans kids face and how much higher my kid's risk was than a cishet kid. And I also knew that the more places that my child felt safe and accepted, the lower their risk would be. More than that, I could see the change in them. They pulled me aside one day and said, "Mom, when I wake up in the morning and I remember that I get to be me, I'm so happy." Because they concealed it for a long time until they felt safe coming out to me, their mom. So I could not ignore the cracks under my feet any longer. The church's teachings were directly putting my child at risk. Plus, I was constantly angry at everybody, listening to all the alt-right rhetoric, the nonsense that was coming out of these people's mouths. I thought to myself, how could you and I have been raised in the same church, read the same scriptures, got the same lessons, supposedly believed the same things, and yet we came to such different conclusions of how you should treat other people? And I looked around and I realized 99 to 1, the outlier was me. And that was shocking. If my kid coming out was an earthquake, that realization that I was the one who was wrong about what I had believed, that was like having a canyon open up at my feet. It's really hard to explain to someone who has not been there, who has not gone through a massive faith crisis, how fearful and painful that can be. I know there are plenty of you here who have had that unfortunate experience. But I remember standing on that metaphorical precipice and thinking that everything I thought I knew was a lie. My major life decisions were all based on lies. I had done unintentional harm to so many other people because of lies. I had given my children emotional scars that I could never undo because of lies. It would have been a lot easier to turn back and pretend like that was not true. To just ignore it all and be like, no, everything's fine, it's great. But I couldn't bring myself to pretend. I had looked behind the curtain and I knew that the wizard was not a wizard, the prophet was not a prophet. I knew what lay behind me. I had been there and I saw the devastation. But my only other option was to step off that precipice and out into the dark. I had no way of knowing what I was going to find out there. Everything was entirely new and different. And I knew that if I wanted to protect my kids, I had to take that step forward. I also knew that according to everything I had been taught growing up, I would literally be damning myself if I took that step. And I was ready to risk that. I said, well, either God will understand that I stepped away from this church because I had to protect my kids, or he sucks and he's not worth worshiping. That was the conclusion I came to. So I was ready to risk hell. But I didn't want to lose my husband. I didn't know if he was going to take that step with me. So over a period of several months, I carefully started feeling him out. I would bring up different things that I had had issues with and kind of gauge his reaction, see what he thought, how he responded. It seemed like it was going okay. And finally one day it just burst out of me. I could not hold it in anymore. I was like, listen, I cannot be a part of this church anymore. And he told me he was in the same boat. He had come to the same conclusion on a slightly different path, but we'd both come there. And yeah, it's kind of funny that we were both, hey, do you think maybe we shouldn't? But it's also tragic that we were so deeply indoctrinated, we were so deeply afraid that one of us was going to choose that church over a spouse of almost 20 years. That's how long we had been together at that point. And there are plenty of Mormon relationships where that happens. A lot of couples split at that point in time. Luckily, we did not. And he's wonderful, and he came with me. Part of why I succeeded in stepping away from the Mormon church was because he came with me, because I did not have to do it alone. Because when I left, I lost a big chunk of my core identity of who I had always defined myself as. On top of that, I lost 99% of my community and my support network overnight. Most of those people, none of them have texted me in over 2 years now. Even though I was like, hey, we can keep in contact. I'm not mad at you all. You're like, we're friends. We can still be friends. Nope. They dropped me. The first time I needed help with picking Lydia up from school because I was sick, I was like, crap, who do I call? One person. I had one person that I knew was still in my court. And she wasn't Mormon. She's actually Catholic. So it was really lonely when it was just me and my husband and our kids, and we were out in this new dark pit at the bottom of the canyon. We had no light. We couldn't see where we were going. We did not know what was out there. But once I had kind of caught my breath, felt like I was ready to start searching again, I started feeling out, trying to check out the ground around me because I don't trust the ground anymore. And when I reached out, I found all of you. You helped me find a way forward. You helped provide a light to shine, to guide my way. I want to tell you just briefly of what I observed in my first couple of weeks at Chalice. And all of this was very shocking to me as a Mormon. I was greeted with such genuine warmth and love by Sharon Slentz and by Reverend Nika. It was heartfelt. And Sharon checked in with me, made sure I knew where to go, and she didn't care if I joined or not. She just was, you're here today. I'm glad you're here with us. From our beloved Sam, I learned that children were protected, respected, and valued here. She embraced their exuberance. She and the rest of you in the congregation valued what they had to say. You cannot imagine a little Mormon kid interrupting sacrament meeting. Up to, there's a little wiggle room, but after that, oh man, that kid would be in for a whooping when they got home. Probably. Matt, you showed me that this was a place where we could laugh and embrace joy, that we did not have to be stuffy and solemn and dignified all the time. And that was wonderful to see. Our dear Torkel, you showed me that here you could dance in the aisles. You could dance for joy and for rebellion. I asked him why he danced. I asked you why you danced once, and you told me that it was also a rejecting the rules kind of thing, that it was not just the joy, that both those things could happen here. Merlin, you taught me that this was a place where someone with a background like mine would be welcomed. You believed that someone like me could change. Plus, as a lifelong science fiction and fantasy fan, meeting a guy named Merlin was really cool. Anthony showed me that church music could be upbeat and fun, that you could get more than like 5 people in the congregation to sing the hymns, and that inspiring and uplifting music can be found all over the world, and that the Beatles have a song for just about everything. And then our wonderful Reverend Nika. I was touched by how well she knew each and every one of you individually. I think during the Joys and Sorrows, one of the first couple weeks I was there, somebody had a sorrow about their dog being sick. I have no idea who it was now because I didn't know you. And I remember Nika taking a second and looking at that person and saying, "Oh, I'm so sorry. You've had that dog for like 14 years now, right?" She knew that off the top of her head. She knew that because it was important to that person. And that person was important to her. She also showed me that wisdom and inspiration cannot be contained to any one culture, any one book, any one religion. She showed me that hope can be found in the darkest of times. There have been many Sundays where I have come and I have left with so much more hope than I entered with. She showed me that when you lead with love, possibilities that you could never have imagined can open to you. You all showed me so much kindness and acceptance, wisdom and joy. You welcomed me with all of my baggage, and you showed me that here, no one has to be perfect in order to have value. You showed me this wonderful place where we don't focus on boxes and labels and checklists. Instead, we just want to make the world a little bit better for everybody, every day. That's what matters. You guys gave me the strength to keep on going on this new path that I was on, to keep trying to be a better person. You helped me find that strength, that sense of purpose and the community that I had desperately been longing for. And you showed me that I do not have to walk this new path that I am on alone. Just by doing what Chalice does best, by welcoming every person, no matter where they came from. You welcome all people of goodwill. For all of that, and for everything else that you are, I say thank you.